once you find a few photographers, be mindful about what the objective is. And the objective is to make sure it's in alignment with your brand image and make sure that you're not asking too much and you set expectations so that people don't get frustrated and there's not bad energy on the day of the shoot.
You're listening to Thrive by Design, business, marketing, and lifestyle strategies for your jewelry brand to flourish and thrive. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Thrive by Design podcast, episode 169. Today, I have one of our Flourish and Thrive grads on the show today. And I call her a grad because she's been through our high-level program. She worked with us for many years, and she went from working with us and, launching her side hustle / hobby, which she called it that, into full-time business, like literally overnight. And today, one of the things I always share Karina's story on this podcast, you probably have heard about her, but one of the things that I know and love about Karina is that she has this amazing knack for curating beautiful photography and photo shoots to help promote her brand that really tell a story and paint the picture of her brand. So I asked Karina to come on the show to kind of share her experience and kind of also share her transformation working with us like in our high level groups and sort of how quickly that can help a business grow. And she's going to share with you some really amazing tips about how to curate and create the most amazing branded photo shoot ever. And while doing it on the cheap, because she still has some pretty insane hacks for, doing her photo shoots in a way that not only save money, but also tell the story of her brand. And that's what this is all about. Everything that you do in your branding as you build a business, how to build this unforgettable brand that you're doing. And from the words that you use, from the stories that you create, from the pictures that you paint, from everything from start to finish, including your designs and how you're putting yourself out there. And this is what helps you attract and connect with your perfect clients, especially on your website. This is what helps you get those social media followers from Instagram onto your website to tell a story. This is exactly what helps you increase conversions on your website for your sales in general, and also helps you re-engage with your current customer base, which is definitely the foundation for our SOS program over here, which we are really excited about because it's open for enrollment for a very short period of time. So if you'd like to check it out or apply, it's actually an application only program. We'd love for you to head on over to flourishthriveacademy.com/SOS and check it out. It is a program specifically designed to help you use your website as your number one selling tool. So it doesn't matter how you're selling your product. This is not specifically an e-commerce program, although we do focus a lot on selling your products direct to consumer on your website. More than anything, it's about learning to tell a story with your brand and using that website to leverage everything else you're doing in your business. So if you're focusing on live events, we're going to help you convert those live event attendees into raving customers who buy from you on your website later down the road. If you're focused on wholesale, it's a great tool to help you connect with wholesale buyers and show that you're a legit business and kind of show the story of your brand online. If you're seeking PR and press, this really shows the editors that you know what you're doing and that they can trust you when they feature you. And of course, if you're trying to sell direct to consumer on your website, this is a great way to start building your email list or continue building your email list, get higher conversions, and turn your website into a consistent selling machine. So definitely check it out. Karina's going to share some of the stuff that we taught her that she's also gleaned off of her experience using her website as her number one selling tool. And it all starts with branded photography. So let's dive in to today's episode. It's going to be awesome. Before I do, I want to introduce Karina super quickly and also mention that I curated some of the things that she spoke about in today's episode into a handy dandy one sheet checklist that you can grab over at the show notes by heading over to flourishthriveacademy.com/episode 169. So you can just grab the link right there to download this amazing little checklist that we have curated for you. So you can create your own beautifully branded photo shoot on the cheap. And here's a little bit about Karina before we dive in. Karina grew up in San Francisco Bay Area and began designing jewelry while working full-time in corporate America. And in 2015, after 2 years of making jewelry as a hobby, Karina left her 9-to-5 job to run her jewelry company, Waffles and Honey, full time. She has an amazing business. You're going to love what you see. If you want to check out her website, head on over to Waffles and Honey, all spelled out, .com, and see her brilliance and her photography as well after you listen to this episode. Okay, let's dive in. Well, today we have a really fun episode. We're talking photos and photo shoots are something that come up all the time in our community over here at Flourish and Thrive because, in fact, I was just at the Jewelry Independent Conference this last weekend. And one of the things that came up over and over again was like, what kind of photos do you want when speaking to editors and stores and all this thing? And the answer, quite frankly, is all sorts. And so today we're going to be focusing on styled photos, model shoots, and photo shoots for promotional branding. And I have a very special guest here today, Karina Harris of Waffles and Honey. Karina, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I am super excited to have you too, Karina. And here's the reason why. I use you as an example all the time in our community, especially when I'm like coaching our SOS students one-on-one, because you've done such an amazing job, not only with your website, and I know that you're going through a rebrand soon, but even with what you've done in the short period of time that you've been in business, like one of the things that I think you've always really shown with is the photo shoots that you produce and the photography. And so I'm always showing people the layout of your website and how you're using those slider images to kind of connect with your customers, which is super awesome. So I want to share just a fun story about you because I've mentioned Karina no less than 25 times on this podcast, and we only have like 170 or 80 episodes so far recorded. And here's the reason why. Karina was doing her business part-time. When did you move from part-time to full-time?
About 2.5 years in after just learning how to make jewelry for the first time.
But how long ago was that?
3 years ago.
Yeah, so 3 years ago, about 3.5 years ago, let's say, Karina reached out to us and we were enrolling our mastermind program at that time. And Karina joined us and she was, really excited and ready to go. She was like, go get her. She's like, I'm going to do this on the side with my business and then get it off the ground and eventually transition to full-time. And then all of a sudden, just a couple months in, she got some news from her job. And I'll let you pick it up from there. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so I was working in the corporate world and I was doing my business on the side more as a hobby until I found Flourish and Thrive. And that's really when I got the structure and confidence to turn it into something more than a hobby. And I had just actually joined the mastermind for the first time. That was in January 2015, I think.
Yep.
It was March 2015 and I got the news that my department at work was going to be dissolved and I was losing my job, and came out of left field. I was super shocked and also really angry. I didn't lose my job. They were just trying to move me into a new department and I just really wasn't wanting to do that. And I was super scared. And so I made the decision, mostly with the help of Tracy and Robin, and encouragement to just take a chance. And instead of going and looking for another 9-to-5 job or moving departments in the company I was at, to really just take the leap of faith and run my hobby at the time, turn it into a full-time business and just see what would happen. So that's what I decided to do. I took a very, very small severance package, which in my mind at the time was a lot, but looking back was probably should have calculated that decision more. But, I had kind of the confidence only because really of my mentors and some of my friends around me who had been on the entrepreneurial path. And I had a lot of fear. And so with that kind of fear of like, I need to make this work, I don't really have a cushion or really like a plan B. This is kind of my only option. I was entering into Mother's Day season. It was April. And I just went full out. And everything that I could think of, everything that Tracy and Robin and I brainstormed, I did. And at the time, I didn't have employees. I was doing it alone. So I just did everything that I could do. It was a really stressful time, but really exciting. And in that month, I think we have about 9 or 10 times the highest amount I had ever done in a single month for the last 2 years. So that gave me some confidence.
Can I share the number?
Yeah, sure.
Was it like $25,000?
Yeah. We went from the largest sales month that I had up to that point was about $3,000, $3,500 during Christmas. So that's, easier money to Yeah, I think it was 22,000 in 30 days.
So crazy. So crazy. I was like, because I remember when I got that call from Robin, she said, Karina just lost her job, basically, or I don't know how she framed it, but it was like basically that you were like, the job was no more. And that was sort of like what was supporting you. And we always like get concerned because some people do what you do and go full in, but some other people panic, and the panic puts them into a place where they're not able to focus on the program that we're putting them through. And I like talk about this story a lot because I'm so proud of you for leaning in and taking action instead of going down a rabbit hole and focusing on fear when that is exactly what you could have done. And your business like went from a small hobby on the side to a thriving jewelry company in a very short period of time. And I'm really proud of you about this. So I just want to tell you that.
Thank you. And I want to thank you again. I know I thank you every time I see you, but honestly, you and Robin were my biggest cheerleaders, and I didn't have too many others. So thank you for changing my business and life, really.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Okay, so we kind of gave a little bit of a framework, but tell us a little bit more about Waffles and Honey. Where does the name come from? Where does your inspiration come from, and all that stuff for your brand?
Sure. So Waffles and Honey was named after my childhood pets. Waffles was my cat, and Honey Bunny was the Welsh Corgi. So that's our logo, is the Corgi. And yeah, I grew up in a family of really creative makers. And so this kind of came naturally to me to, just start making my own jewelry. And it didn't really hit me as a viable business idea until I was introduced to Flourish and Thrive. So I was just kind of learning how to make jewelry, watching YouTube videos, and just trial and error. And that's how I got started, really.
That's so cool. I love it. So one of the things let's dive into the photography piece, because this is, maybe it's because you come from a creative maker family or something, but I've never seen someone with such great vision for photography out of the gate. Because like even before you were doing this full time, I feel like you had good styled photos. So let's talk a little bit about that. I've used you as an example many, many times. And if you guys want to go stalk Karina, head on over to wafflesandhoney.com. You might have already seen it if you're in our community, because I've used her as an example so many times. But she really has a wonderful knack, or you really have, Karina, a wonderful knack for telling stories through photography. So I want you to tell me a little bit more about how you plan these shoots. I know, based on talking to you, that you don't spend a lot of money on them necessarily. And especially when you were first starting out, you weren't spending a ton of money. So let's talk about, I want to talk first of all about how you sort of like plan the shoot. And then I'd like to dive into like how to do it on a budget. And if you have been doing shoots for a while, how to like really elevate your shoots to the next level. So does that sound good? Why don't we start first with like how you plan the shoot? So tell us a little bit about the steps that you take to do that.
Sure. So everything is pretty systematized at this point, but it was also pretty systematized in the beginning. So I don't shoot whenever I feel like it. I shoot twice a year just to keep costs down. And because it's really organized and I shoot twice a year, I have to have everything in a row, because if I forget to shoot something, or, it's not, like we're missing some images that we need 3 or 4 months later, I don't go and do another photo shoot just because of the cost of it. So it really comes down to organization and just planning ahead. So what I do is first, I kind of come up with an idea, depending on if we're shooting spring, summer collection or fall holiday. I kind of come up with an idea for what I want the theme to feel like and look like. And really what I've realized through my 5-6 years of doing photo shoots 2-3 times a year is that what really matters is if it's an on-model photo shoot, what really matters is that the clothing that the model's wearing isn't clashing or competing with the jewelry. So the jewelry,
that's important.
Yeah, that's something that I had to learn that I didn't realize, because I got really excited in the beginning of putting a lot of energy and attention into the location we were shooting in or the props we had. And since I make really delicate jewelry, the jewelry gets lost if the frame of the image is too far back. So it's really focusing on the details of what the crop of the image is going to look like, and then working around that. So I never get too concerned about what the background is or where we're going to be. I'm more concerned with what the the detail directly around the piece of jewelry is going to look like. And then also the lighting. Those are two things that really create the feel or look of each photo shoot, depending on the season we're shooting for.
That's super cool. Do you create like a mood board or something before this to kind of get the inspiration?
Yeah. So, in the beginning, I would do it kind of like right before the photo shoot would happen. I would create a Pinterest board. I would go searching around, looking at other brands, clothing brands, accessory brands, not necessarily jewelry, just kind of getting a sense of what they were doing, the lighting they were using, the crops they were using on the images, just to get inspiration. And then as I've got it more dialed in, I actually just do this year round. Like I'm on a bunch of different email lists, and whenever I see inspiration for an image, or I'm on like Nordstroms.com or Zappos or whatever it is, I'll go to the website, just shopping personally for myself, and I'm really always looking for images that strike me that I could possibly use some component of it, and I'll screenshot it and I'll add it to a Pinterest board so that I'm not having to do so much work the weeks leading up to the photo shoot. It's just kind of, I have this library of images that I can look at, and it, for the 6 or 8 months leading up to the photo shoot, I don't have to do so much work. So I definitely have a collection of images that I always look at and add to. And since I have such a large collection, I don't use all of the images that I collect. So they've kind of stockpiled. And so I can go back to my Pinterest board of fall 2017, fall 2016, when I'm trying to plan my fall 2018, because I don't use all the image inspiration and I don't have to recreate the wheel every time.
Okay, that's great advice. And I'm the worst, because like what I would do is probably like the day before be on like Pinterest.
Yeah, don't do that. That's really stressful. That used to be me.
I'm laughing. You're like, oh, yeah, I curate the images for 6 months in advance. And I'm like, okay, so this is just like an ongoing thing. Like when you see something that strikes you, pin it. Don't worry about if it's like right or wrong. Just like get it on the board and look at it later.
Yeah, it's kind of a game. Like you're just going about normal life, and when you find something, you can add it, and then you'll be surprised, because sometimes themes really come up, and you'll have 6 months of images, and you'll be like, oh wow, a lot of the images that I screenshotted or pinned are this crop or using this lighting, or you start to find some themes, and then naturally you can just draw the inspiration for the photo shoot just by looking at everything you've collected.
That's awesome. So how do you find the models and the photographers? And I have follow-up questions for this, but I'm curious about how you start there. And are you paying these people?
Yeah, so it's kind of been over time an evolution, but as you mentioned, I don't put a bunch of money into photo shoots. They can get really, really expensive, and I'm mindful of how much money goes into each season. So I try to stick with a really tight budget. And I mean, the way that I find a lot of my photographers is I'm just constantly asking. I like to, as I mentioned earlier, I like to kind of keep libraries of things, of resources. So I have also kind of a resource library of, as I'm out talking to friends or other artists or just networking in general, and someone mentions that their friend's a photographer, or they're starting a photography business, I'll grab their contact information and put it in a file in my email so that I have a file of resources when I'm ready to use them. And what I really ask for when I'm networking and looking, what I mention to people, I'll just constantly tell people that I'm looking for photographers, even if I'm not going to use them for 6 months or 2 months or whatever it is I'm really looking for someone who maybe is just getting started, but has a portfolio of work. Mm-hmm. I find that those people are they're the best fit, because they know what they're doing, they have the equipment, but they're not charging, like a competitive professional photographer day rate.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I look for. That's the criteria with the photographers, is I need to see what their past work looks like, but I'm not so concerned if they don't have a really robust portfolio. I look more for potential.
Mm-hmm. And because you can guide them with your mood boards and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also really important, I was going to mention this. So it's really important to ask your photographer or the photographers you're interviewing kind of a series of questions, because everyone, depending on the type of photography they do or their skill level, has a different kind of way they work. And it's most helpful to get on the same page up front before any money has been exchanged, before any mood boards have gone back and forth, is just like really getting on the same page and saying things like, what type of lighting do you prefer to shoot in? Do you prefer studio lighting where we're shooting inside and your sweet spot or zone of genius is to set up all the lighting in a dark room and create the lighting from scratch? Or do you like shooting using natural light, being outside? Do you shoot more, what's your style? Is it more like wedding, whimsical, soft? Or is it more hard editorial, like an Apple or like an iPod ad sort of thing?
Yeah, like edgy.
Exactly. And there's different styles and not everyone can do all the styles. So I think that's something that I found that I got really excited about the photographer and, oh, this person's going to be great. I really like them as a person. And then I look at their body of work and I'm like, it's okay. Maybe they'll be good enough. Maybe I can train them to do what I want them to do on set. And I found that unfortunately is a really big pain point because you get into the photo shoot and you have different artistic vision or different talents, or you're expecting them to do something that they don't know how to do or they don't want to do. So I think that's a really important conversation to have up front once you find a few photographers, is to really be mindful about what the objective is. And the objective is to make sure it's in alignment with your brand image and make sure that you're not asking too much and you set expectations so that people don't get frustrated and there's not bad energy on the day of the shoot.
Absolutely. That's great feedback. Have you ever had a shoot where the photographer just wasn't the right fit?
Yeah, I have had photographers where it's maybe they're not able to do something skill-wise that I had thought that they were able to do. And that's really tough to navigate in the present moment because it's not just the photographer, right? You have models there. I usually have hair, makeup, and a stylist, and then I'm there. Sometimes my assistant's there. So the team can be up to, and the shoots I do, 7 people. And so it's really a hard conversation to have in front of everyone and to kind of pause. And when that has happened, I'm taking in kind of what their ability is on the day of the shoot. And if I'm noticing they're really not able to do it, sometimes I'll pivot and I have to be flexible because I get what I pay for. I don't have a huge budget. So I have to kind of see okay, what is their ability? How can I use their talent to achieve what I need right now? I'm not going to get what I want and then I'm disappointed, but I have to stick with the time schedule. So how can I pivot? And it's good to realize that early on in the day. If it's not working, to be really vocal about, hey, let's stop. Let's see how we can improve this. Really helpful thing is to have inspiration images, even if you've shown them before, to have them the day of the shoot on the computer, pulled up, all organized in a Pinterest board or in a file, so that if they're not really going in the direction that you're hoping, you can show them and say what you like about the photo. I like the lighting of this photo. I like the crop of this photo. I like how the model is positioned in this photo. As detailed as you can get with someone who's not as experienced with photography or maybe art direction, with guiding them of this is specifically about what about this photo I want, is really helpful to get on the same page pretty fast. So if you don't have a mutual vocabulary for photography, which you probably won't because you aren't a professional photographer, you're a jeweler and a business owner, having images and just beforehand having those parameters of what you want with examples. So you don't have to use words. You can just point and say, this is what I want for lighting. How do you achieve this? Can you do this? If not, okay, can you do something close to it? And just kind of find middle ground.
That's awesome. That's great advice. So you're working with what you got, trying to get the best kind of shot that you can possibly get while you're there and find a place where you're both happy and working in your zone of genius. Okay, let's talk about models. You just did a recent shoot with your bridal line that you just launched. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
I noticed one of the beautiful bridesmaids was you.
Yes. Thank you.
I'm like, there's Karina. So tell us more about how you find models. Because on that shoot, you had a lot of models. And I know on some of your earlier shoots, it was probably friends who were being the model for you. So how have you sourced your models?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on where you are geographically. I'm fortunate I live in San Francisco. My business is San Francisco. My connections are in the city and down in LA and San Diego. So I have a lot of resources in urban areas where there's just a high density of people. So I have more resources available. But how I source my models, in the beginning, my photographer, who is a really good friend of mine, since he's in the photography world, we went to photography school. And he's a professional photographer. He has a lot of connections to other creatives, whether it be hair and makeup, models. And so there are literally websites where it's just talent, like models. And you can go and it's kind of like online dating. It's really weird. I was surprised at first, but you can go and you can put in, I'm looking for this height, this weight, and you can really like choose who you want. And a lot of photographers who are professional or semi-professional will pay an annual subscription fee to have access to many libraries of models in the area that you want. And you can find people you can put at the budget you're willing to pay. If there's no budget, the trade value or what they can get out of it. You can get really creative because there's a lot of people just wanting to build their portfolio. So I would check with the photographer before you go and do all of this legwork, even if they're not that experienced, just see, maybe they've worked with models in the past that they can recommend. And maybe they have subscriptions to these model boards that they can give you access to or find for you. A lot of the photographers that I've used, it's what they do day and night. And so they do know other people who are in the same profession that can help you.
Awesome. And as I always say, and Robin says the same thing too, if you have a pretty cousin who knows how to take a good selfie, maybe she's a good one.
Totally. And one thing I would say about that is I've noticed that in terms of doing something like on the cheap, so it's not really, I wouldn't ever recommend getting everything cheap. I would find at least one person, and this could be you after a while, like now it's me, but one person who's extremely experienced in whatever it is they do. If the photographer isn't experienced, you want to get a model who's experienced.
Yeah.
The model will know just ever so slightly how to move her lip, how to flare her nostril, these things that we don't even realize that
flare the nostril. Wow.
Like really weird things. And they just can, they do it. They know how to move and work their body in a way that's like exactly what you want. And so if the model is experienced, but the photographer's not, that's okay. You can work with that. If the photographer's experienced, but the model isn't, that's okay. The photographer will probably know if he or she has shot other people before, how to position the model. Or if you get a stylist and the stylist is really good at, helping with art direction, just someone who's been doing it for a while, regardless of who it is on the team, having one person who's experienced really helps make it look a lot more polished, because you don't need to have everyone being professional, but having one person knowing what they're doing is
super helpful.
Much better.
I remember years ago, one of our designers, Sarah, she had a model, and I'm not going to say the last name or the brand just because I'm crack a little joke here, but she had a model that she found that she did, some sort of trade with, which was great. But the model had one look, and that was like, that duck lip kind of like puffy lip thing. Like that was the only look. And so we were joking after the shoot. I'm like, your model only has one look. Like no matter how her body was turned, like her face always looked exactly the same, which I think it's important. Like I remembered that because this model that she hired was someone who was an aspiring model at the time. But I think it's funny because you're like, if the model's professional, she knows how to flare her nose. I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, totally. And another thing you can do, there's a lot of ways you can get creative with models. I'm usually really strategic with now, since I have it more systematized, I can play with kind of the other components of the photo shoot. So if you're someone who's been doing a photo shoot for a while and you kind of know how to do it, and maybe you're getting bored and you want to spice it up, like I always raise the bar, and I'm going after models who have a really large Instagram following or social media presence, because I want them to share my brand with their audience. So,
so like influencers, you ask them to model for you?
Yeah.
Like models that have like big followings.
Exactly. And you don't have to know the person. Like I'll just DM them and I'll say, hey, you're in San Francisco or you're in LA. I'll come down to LA. Would you like to model for this jewelry shoot? And then just a lot of them will reply because they just want professional photos taken of them.
And like, what if they send you to like their agent or something like that? What do you do when that happens?
Yeah, that's a great question. So anytime photographer or talent, whether it be a model or hair and makeup or stylist, says, thanks for contacting me, let me send you to a middle person, like a middleman. For me, that I usually say, I don't think this is a great fit for me, because when that comes into play, the agent is definitely going to want to take a cut. And in that case, it really comes down to money. And to be transparent, we don't pay our models. We've never paid a model. We don't pay our hair and makeup, and we don't pay our stylist. The only person that
Really?
I've ever paid, I don't pay anyone. It's all trade except for my photographer.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So when someone comes to you with saying they have an agent, I just say no, because that means it's going to be marked up at least 15%. That's the industry standard for an agent, at least. And there's no trade involved because an agent can't make money off getting the model a necklace.
So how do you, okay, let's talk about this, because you're negotiating fees with, because the makeup artist wants to get photos that they can use to show like the kind of work that they can do. And, I just did a shoot in San Francisco last week where I saw you, and I paid for my hair and makeup with a makeup artist that I've been using for a while. And I did barter with the photographer only because she is a jewelry client of mine and she asked for it. So I was just like, okay, because she wanted to get a wedding band for her husband, long story short. And I know that at this point, she's such a good photographer that I'm getting the good end of the deal. She probably charged me a lot more than she had in the past, and she's an amazing photographer. But that's not the usual. Like, I'm usually paying for the photographer or there's like a different deal. Like, I'm doing another shoot here in New York in a couple of weeks that will include some jewelry stuff and stuff like that includes the hair and makeup. So all these people have like different arrangements. I'm going a little bit on a tangent, but I'm going to bring it back. So how do you like negotiate the barter package, like what it's going to be?
Well, so it takes a little bit of upfront work just because, you're trading, you're not paying them. So when it comes to bartering, what I find is if you continue to use the same person, unless they're totally in love with your brand and want to collect everything you make, it usually after 1 or 2 shoots, they'll say, I'm not working for trade anymore. This is my day rate. And so they'll ask for money. And so because I know that happens and I understand why they wouldn't want to continuously work for trade, I'm constantly looking for new talent, constantly looking for new models, new hair and makeup. And it's a little bit of a challenge because once you find someone that you really like and you trust, you're like, I really want to work with them again because it would be so much easier and it's safe and I know. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I'm just saying that I'm really like budget is my number one concern with my photo shoot. So I'll find hair and makeup, and typically the first resource that I go to for finding hair and makeup is the photographer. I always hire the photographer first. We set a date because the talent is the hair and makeup and the models. They're always more last minute than the photographer. The photographer typically likes to book out, and the hair and makeup and model I found one photo shoot, we hired the model the day of because one of our models flaked. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, models in general, they're rather flaky, which not to stereotype, but I've found that photo shoots are always changing. So it's not their fault. They had a gig and then the gig was canceled. And so now they're available, or they cancel on you because of whatever reason. So I always get canceled on with my models, and it's a little bit frustrating, but it's kind of the nature of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always looking for new models. I'm always looking for new hair and makeup. And again, I start as soon as my fall collection is shot, I start sourcing for my spring collection. I start asking the models, hey, do you have any other friends, hair and makeup? Hey, do you know anyone? I'll go on local wedding blogs of people who, or Instagram, like I'll search the geolocation of hair and makeup, wedding hair and makeup, or makeup artist, or something like that, just based on location. And I can usually find people that way. But again, a lot of the times the photographer will already have resources. And since I use new photographers pretty often, it's always new talent that gets introduced to me. And I'll just say before I go do the legwork, what hair and makeup artists do you know? What stylists do you know? What models do you know? And sometimes it's included in their day rate fee they charge you. So no need to go and do the work if you're already paying for it.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Okay. So let's talk about the styling, because you talked about not having clothing that is going to detract from the jewelry, but how do you that's like a whole another realm. And most of us probably can't, or a lot of people can't probably afford a stylist. I personally like to style my own shoots because I know it looks good on me, and I'm always curating stuff, and I know like, oh, I haven't worn this before. So whatever. So how do you do it? And I know you're not the subject, but how are you shooting for models or planning for models?
In terms of wardrobe or in terms of using a stylist?
So how do you plan the wardrobe? Do you use a stylist, or do you do something else?
Okay. So in terms of wardrobe, since I'm like you and I feel like I know my brand best, and I know since I do it all the time, I kind of know what works and what doesn't. I still use a stylist, but I go and I source all of the outfits. So I'm the one who chooses the outfits. And if the stylist offers, I will take her up on it if it's not an extra fee. And also if I, in addition, am sourcing. I never just let the stylist source the clothes. I need to have like the backup outfits if what she brings doesn't work. So I would recommend always, you know your brand best. So that's something that I don't let go of control of. I don't outsource the selection of outfits. So the kind of in the workflow order is I first find my model because I need to know what size she wears. So I ask what size dress, what size shoes, what size top, what size pants, what size swimsuit. Those are the questions I ask.
Okay.
And then, I go and I usually use clothing that's not patterned, really neutral colors. And I'm very conscious of the neckline. The neckline is the number one thing, whether it be a swimsuit, a romper, a shirt, a dress. The neckline is what makes or breaks it. And I just look for things that are simple, no detail, no sequins, no ruffles. It just detracts too much from my jewelry, even though it's really fun and I'm drawn to it and I always want to buy it. It's not what sells my jewelry. So I just go for like the tried and trues. And if I find something that works season after season, a silk cami, a white t-shirt, I keep it because models are typically around the same size that I use. So they go, 2 or 3 sizes in variation, but the stylist can pin the clothing back. So it's hard to find clothing that works for me, for my jewelry. So I keep it and I reuse it and we just restyle it in different ways every season.
So do you keep that in your like clothing bank at your office or something?
Yeah. We just have a few things. I try not to keep too much just because I'm really mindful of budget. But again, you kind of have to calculate how much time am I spending shopping for these things and sourcing these things versus how much does this cost and how much time am I saving by not having to do this every 6 months.
Thank you for saying that because I think that's very important. Your time is money. Let's just put it that way. All right, cool. Is there anything else about the styling that you want to share?
I think, once you find the outfits for the model, things that you might want to think about are, okay, so what colors do I have her in? What color underwear should I ask her to show up in? I know it's kind of awkward, but models are used to being touched and directed and, naked and all sorts of things that you're like, oh, this is kind of weird. But the more direction you can give them. So I typically say, please wear nude underwear, nude bra, strapless, because I have a few different tops or things I want them in. And then I also am really cognizant of their bra size, really, because a lot of things, the majority of the pieces I sell are necklaces. And if she has a larger chest, I'll buy different outfits than I would if she had a smaller chest. So chest size is what I found is really important to kind of hash through because that kind of, it sets a tone for your brand. You don't want too much.
You don't want too cleavagey.
Yeah, or maybe you do, and then you buy something different. So underwear is something that I would be mindful of, and also nail color. I always ask my models to show up wearing a nude color nail because we sell rings, and I don't want them to show up with like a hot pink or like really long acrylics. That's totally not on brand for my brand, and it's something that maybe they don't think about, or maybe I wouldn't think about. And if we don't have hair and makeup coming, I'll ask them specifically, please show up with your hair like this. Please let me know if you've gotten a haircut since these photos of what you look like that you sent me. Yeah. I want to know what I'm getting day of. I don't want to be surprised. And then I'll know if I should ask them to wear their hair natural or if I should pay to go get their hair done at like a blow dry bar. And I'll ask them, how comfortable are you doing your own hair and makeup? Can you send me images of where you've done your own hair and makeup? What's your natural versus straightened versus curled hair look like?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask. If you're paying them, you're giving them product and they want to show up for you so that you'll share the images and they'll get more publicity. Like they really want to make this work for you too. So you just need to be assertive and kind, of course, in what you want, but people just need direction a little bit, I find. So don't be afraid to speak your mind.
That's awesome. So my next question was going to ask you the key to planning a successful shoot that's stress-free. I think you kind of outlined this for us though. So I would love to know if there's anything else. Like what I'm getting is, number one, start planning 6 months in advance, do your research and start curating photos, find the model or find the photographer first, and then look for the models because they're more last minute. Give the models a lot of direction and shop the wardrobe of the look and feel that you want to get. And a lot of that has to be is based on like the model size and bust size and all that stuff. Is there anything else that you would add to make this like super easy?
Yeah, there are a few things. The first thing that I would do is, and I've learned this the hard way, so I hope this comment helps someone out there and someone will do this. Please have a contract with your photographer and all of your talent. The photography world, especially people starting off, there's definitely different ways that people work, and you just want it up front. If a photographer comes to you, I've had this happen recently, a photographer comes to you after they've delivered the images, it was a great shoot, everything's beautiful, and they're saying, hey, why aren't you tagging me on social media? Or hey, you're not allowed to put that on your website because you don't have printing rights. Or hey, I saw that you sent this out in the mail, you printed it and got this to print and put it on flyers, or now it's an ad in your store. Like we have a brick and mortar during the holiday season, and we blow up these huge images for our store windows that photographers have taken. And if they're coming back to you upset that the usage rights were abused, like that's not a good situation. So really, even if they don't have a contract that they are used to sending out, like if they're just starting out, doing the upfront work and making the contract for them or with them is really important. Talking about like, hey, how do you see me using these images? Do I need to tag you on social media? Can I print these images? Do I own these images? Who owns these images? Those are really important things that can just create a lot of headache and frustration later on. So before I send money over, I just make sure that the operating terms are really clear with the models as well. So I would say contract, number one, that's something to make it stress-free. Another thing is to be really organized and have a set list. So a set list is just essentially a list of images written down that you need. And the way that my team and I decide what images we need for the photo shoot is we have a marketing calendar. Thanks to Flourish and Thrive, we learned that tool. So we have a marketing calendar and we go through before the photo shoot. We're actually doing this on Wednesday because our photo shoot is in 3 weeks. We go through and we say, okay, what emails do we need to send out between the photo shoot and the end of the season? So essentially September 15th to Christmas, for example, for this season. What creative images do we need for the banners for the website, for our Instagram posts, and for our emails? And that way, you know how to prioritize what is essential. And if you're kind of realizing that you're running out of time on the photo shoot, you know that you've checked off the list of these are the images that I needed because we need, one styled image full of boxes so that it can be a holiday image. We need, an image of, we're going to try to promote, cocktail earrings for holiday parties. So we need the model to be wearing a cocktail dress with holiday lighting. Like it can't be like summery and she can't just be like on a white background. It needs to be styled in that way. So really intentional on creating a set list. And that's the structure that we use. I don't know, there's probably many other ways, but having the exact number of images that are essential, like you need to know if you're hitting your like KPIs, like you need to know if you're getting what you want out of the photo shoot. If you don't know what you want going in,
you're not going to get it.
You're going to get it, and you're going to make your team really frustrated. So you just have a set list of the images that are essential and the images that would be nice, and then the images that if you happen to have extra time, what would be like a dream. And usually I get through the essentials, sometimes get into the what would be nice, and I never ever get to the dream images because we run out of time. But
yeah, it's like a must to have, knock it out of a park.
Exactly. And then also, communicating that to the team the day of, saying, hey, I'm so excited you all are here. This is how the day's going to go. And people just want to be guided. Like I said, they just want to know what to expect. You can say from 8 to 9, hair and makeup's going to be doing the model. The photographer is going to set up the lighting and I'm going to be doing X, Y, and Z. From, this time to this time, we're going to be shooting holiday images. We're going to be shooting 3 holiday images. These are the backgrounds and this is the direction. Show the Pinterest board to the whole team. So everyone's like, okay, cool. This is what we're doing next. Keeps the morale up, keeps the energy high. People know when they get to go home and they don't start getting resentful. Another thing that I would say is little things go a small way. I buy my team lunch every time. It's a different team every time. Mm-hmm. It's a $50 lunch maximum for 7 people. I get it delivered from Uber Eats or, it doesn't have to be fancy, but just that extra spending $10, $7 extra on a person, having tea or having bubbly water or bottles of water, cookies from Costco, like anything to be like, I appreciate you. Thanks for being here. Like, this is great. You guys are great. I'm so grateful for you. It just makes the vibe of the shoot go really well. And I find that my job as I see myself as the creative direction on set. That's how I view myself, to make sure everything is going with the timeline. And also I'm getting the images that I need. It's more of an operations role, is to be the glue and check in and be like, wow, the photographer is getting frustrated. What can I do? Oh, she's in the chair. She's standing too long. Or, oh, the sun is like in her face and maybe she's starting to sweat, or the model is, getting really tired, or maybe like on her phone texting. Maybe she's going through having an issue, personal issue. So I'm just always scanning to make sure that it's a cohesive team, because if one person's not in it, it really takes down the energy of the team and it really affects the shoot just holistically. So just being mindful and being the glue, making sure everyone's drinking water, getting breaks, happy, connecting with each other. That's something that on the day of the shoot is really helpful.
That's awesome. Karina, this is amazing. I was taking notes because I'm doing another shoot and I'm like, I know that the photographer's got it handled because this is what she does for a living. But I was like, we just did a bunch of maker videos over here at Flourish and Thrive. They came out amazing. And I was the creative director on it. And I'm handing it off to other people because I just, my time's limited, because we want to be able to do the same thing for the other members of our community. And I just think it's so fun to see like how other people process this and how they kind of approach like creative direction. And so thank you for sharing this. And I hope that you've all learned that like having a successful shoot does take organization. And Karina is like definitely a highly organized person, which is amazing. But just start where you are. If you can gain some of these tips so that you're feeling stress-free and you're at a place where you can kind of glean on some of the tips that Karina has for hiring models and photographers and makeup for barter. Like this is just a great way to get started and create an amazing shoot. So Karina, where can everyone find you?
We are on Instagram, Waffles and Honey, all spelled out, and then wafflesandhoney.com. And if you want to ask me any questions or need advice with Photoshoot or anything else business-wise, feel free to just contact us on my website. It goes to my personal email. And I love hearing from Flourish and Thrive community members. Always happy to help.
Thank you so much, Karina. Have an awesome day. Thanks everyone for listening today.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you so much for listening to the show today. This is Tracy Matthews signing off. But before I do, I want to remind you that you can grab the amazing checklist that we curated for you, all about how to create a branded photo shoot that tells the story of your brand on the cheap. Head on over to flourishthriveacademy.com/episode 169 to download the checklist right there in the show notes. And if you haven't done so yet, I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast. You can head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts, obviously. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button and give us a little rating or review. This lets us know that you like what we're doing and gives us a little insight into what you're loving the most so that we can produce more of that and create more of that. Anyway, this is Tracy Matthews signing off. I hope that you got a lot of value out of today's episode. Take care until next time. I am super pumped to watch your business flourish and thrive just like Karina's did. And if you're interested in learning more about our SOS program, you can head on over to the show notes and we'll definitely have a link over there. All right, signing off. Take care.